Welcome everybody to session D2. Really glad that you can join us, and apologies for the IT glitch. I want to run through some notes very quickly before I introduce our speaker. I'm really excited to hear this presentation, which is following the Feather Addiction Support Program. So my name is Ash, and I'm joined by Adriana, and I'll be co-facilitating today's session. And I just wanted to run through quick housekeeping notes, which you may be familiar with. So throughout the session, if you do have a question for Jackie, we ask that you use the chat function, which is at the bottom of your screen, and to please type question in caps, followed by whatever question you have for Jackie, and we'll be answering as many questions that we can at the end of the session today. We do also kindly ask that you keep yourselves on mute until we get to the Q&A portion of the session. And just a reminder that the session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the platform and accessible for a period of 90 days for any individuals that have registered for the HSGCC conference. And at the end of the session, we're going to ask that you just take a few moments to fill out a short evaluation. Feedback is really appreciated to help inform events such as this one. So we would really appreciate if you could take some time to do that. And lastly, we just kindly ask that everyone sharing the space is engaging with each other thoughtfully and considering the impact of your words and interactions on others, and that we want to ensure that everybody feels safe here. So any kind of like inappropriate behavior will be promptly dealt with. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker, Jackie Davidson. And I'm going to pass things over to you, Jackie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. We're going to talk a little bit about this, but I'd like to start with our opening statement, which is a land acknowledgement. We recognize that the land on which we provide care is located on the traditional lands of the Indigenous people. Thunder Bay is located on the traditional lands of Fort William First Nation, signatory to the Robertson-Superior Treaty of 1850. With honor, we are committed to a relationship with the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people based on the principle of mutual trust, respect, and inherent rights and treaty rights of all Indigenous people in collaboration with the spirit of truth and reconciliation. With assurance, we continue to walk together forward with the Indigenous peoples. We are committed to building a stronger community. Sorry. Bonjour, my name is Jackie Davidson. My pronouns are she, her. I was born and raised in Atikokan, Ontario. I'm a member of Couchiching First Nation, which lay on the shore of Rainy Lake. I am a member of the Bear Clan. I am the Indigenous Health and Wellness Worker at Northwest Community Health Centres in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And I have an extensive background working with the vulnerable population, such as those facing addiction, mental health, and helping through finding community services for them. I spent a year working in isolated northern communities in Northwestern Ontario, as well as supporting the social and mental health needs of evacuees that are often brought into our cities due to forest fires or flooding. I've witnessed firsthand the intense need for resources provoked by the genocide of addiction and mental health within this community and surrounding populations. These lived experiences drive my strength and passion to continue to heal and reconciliation with my people and all people in need of help. My colleague Marlene is unfortunately not able to attend today. She had a little medical emergency this morning. I don't know how old she is. She's an elder. She has been here at Norwest for 20 years, and she's a program coordinator, and she specializes in Native programming, Indigenous programming, sorry. So 6,828 emergency department visits for mental health and substance-related issues here in Thunder Bay in 2020. The rate of 30-day repeats for mental health related visits is 20%, or was 20%, and the rate for 30-day substance use related visits was 45%. An analysis of crisis response and the emergency department visits for mental health and substance use disorders revealed that almost 500 individuals accessed crisis services. Between 2017 and 2020, the number of individuals that had more than 3 repeat visits for their disorders had decreased or increased from 24 to 30%. Between 2017 and 2021, Memorial Detox Center for Withdrawal Management had an average of 3,000 submissions annually, with an equivalent number who could not be admitted because there was no room. There was no beds for them. Those admitted had an average length stay of 3 days. There were 4,300 calls in Thunder Bay to Thunder Bay Police Services for mental health and alcohol abuse in 2018. Right now, the opiate-related mortality rate is 10% higher in the Thunder Bay district than the rest of the province. 2022 statistics showed in Thunder Bay, the district health unit there's 114 suspected drug-related deaths reported in 2022. Well, that number is down from the year before. Overdoses are an upward trajectory. In Canada, about 51% of the prisoners housed in federal correctional institutions have had alcohol problems, and about 48% of Canadian federal prisoners experience problems with drugs other than alcohol. Indigenous people represent about 4% of Canada. Now, I'm just gonna spend a minute to explain this, because every time I read it, since the first time I read it, I thought, how can that number be so small? And what I, after much research, learned was this number is taken from people who identify as First Nations people. And who we're missing when we're looking at this population, this percentage of Canada, is people that were adopted, First Nations people that were adopted from their family, people who choose not to identify as First Nation, people who were scooped, and children or adults who were never registered as Indigenous people from birth. So when you start looking at all those little reasons why the First Nations people, that percentage isn't bigger, there's so many different dynamics as to why they're not identified as Indigenous people. So Indigenous people represent about 4% of Canada's population, but are overrepresented in prisons. Indigenous men represent 37%, and Indigenous women are at 45%. As we know, addiction is sociologically linked to criminalization and victimization, and 25% of Indigenous people in Canada suffer from addiction, compared to 17% of the general population. Overall, just over half of all the Canadians federal offenders report that substance use and abuse was either directly or indirectly related to one or more of the offenses that they are presently incarcerated for. 22.9%, or roughly 1 in every 5 prisoners, was homeless when incarcerated. An average stay in custody was just a little bit more than 2 months. Within days of discharge, the prisoners' housing plans indicated that their overall projected rate of homelessness would increase by 40%. Half of them plan to return to their pre-incarceration housing situation. Among prisoners who were housed before being incarcerated, 16.4% anticipated being homeless upon discharge. 13% of the surveyed respondents were homeless both before and after being incarcerated. Overall, 32%, or almost 1 in every 3 prisoners, had plans upon discharge to go to a shelter, live on the streets, or couch surf. Another 12% of these prisoners are at risk of being homeless, since they didn't even have a plan of where they may go. If these 2 groups are combined, the total is 44.6% are homeless or at risk of homelessness. That's almost half the population of Canada. Social environment, housing poverty, unemployment, housing costs, and the justice system are barriers to achieve good health outcomes in the District of Thunder Bay. Housing loss and problematic substance use are often interrelated, and the most commonly reported reason for loss of housing in the city of Thunder Bay. Community partners who provide services to the people who use drugs indicate that their lack of safe, affordable housing there is a lack of safe, affordable housing for their clients. Housing providers indicate that there is a lack of coordination or coordinated supportive services to successfully house individuals who have been chronically homeless or who have mental health and or substance use challenges. Multiple studies have identified trauma and intergenerational trauma as high-risk factors for substance disorders and overdose in the Indigenous population. Almost all, 97% of the Indigenous respondents to the United Way Thunder Bay Count survey reported witnessing or experiencing racism, and discrimination. Historical policies are also reflected in the continued dislocation from communities that individuals have to travel to larger centers experience treatments for health issues, education, a better standard of living. Northwestern Ontario has highlighted the importance of social relationships, Indigenous teachings, and community strengths in maintaining health behaviors. With that, something that I had thought about when doing this research and reading about where the Indigenous people have to travel from, even to get to Thunder Bay. We service, I think, 21 northern communities. I had the privilege of working in about 7 or 8 of them. And the flight time to get from that community to Thunder Bay, the closest one to us is probably an hour, and it's straight north. And it's only air access or ice road access. What got me was, at the time that I was doing this research, I was watching the news, and Canada is inviting refugees from the Ukraine. And they're coming here because they want a better life. They want better social economics. We have our own people coming from the northern communities to urban settings like Thunder Bay, hoping for the same things. Better social economics, better housing, better access to food and drinking water, education for their children. And they don't get the same privileges as someone coming from another country. That kind of stuck with me. So the idea for following the Feather program started with the need for an Indigenous lens. An Indigenous lens to look at and to be used in the healing of addictions within our community of Thunder Bay. The thought of the program was to use traditional healings, traditional teachings as a way of living, while still implementing the Western lens so that you're still using that 12-step program that's been traditionally used forever. So we developed the 12-step addiction support program based on the Indigenous cultural knowledges and traditional healings. Following the Feather program, the program, it's so versatile and adaptable that it can be presented anywhere at any time. Everything that you need is right here in this book. And it goes week by week. And it gives you everything that you need The teachings, everything is there. So anyone can pick up this book wherever you are and with 12 weeks present this program. The program, so the program is based on the 7 secret teachings, the Indigenous medicine wheel. The intention of the program is to support the needs of anyone looking for a healthier way of life. The goal of this program also is to support people experiencing addiction, recovery, and sobriety. While building a healthy community, the program was developed with an ongoing Indigenous addiction. The program was developed to assist with the ongoing addiction issues in the community and justice system. It models healthy, traditional, and cultural ways of living. So this program has a solid foundation in place for the facilitator to provide cultural knowledge and teaching to those who are in need. The program was set up to follow a 12-week cycle continuously. The program can provide support to any community member who wants to follow a traditional Indigenous 12-step addiction program, support program, at any point in their recovery. So although it's developed so the teachings are in the order they should be, if someone decided that they didn't want to start this program and 3 weeks go by and then they decide they want to start, then they can step in on week 3, which would be courage, and carry on and go all the way around and finish with love and integrity. So it can be constantly ran over 12 weeks, which is ideal for a setting like a correctional center, because in those weeks, people may come and people may leave. So it allows you to just continually run it for those who are able to complete it. The guidelines of respect are a huge thing within the program. And it's very simple. Be respectful of others that are speaking and don't interrupt. We will always make time to listen to anyone share their journey, because everyone's thoughts and opinions are important. We're all in it together, and you always have to be mindful, because you don't ever know what someone else's story is or what they're going through. And if you don't allow someone to tell their story, then you might not ever learn from it. And if you feel triggered at any point during the program and need to leave, you just need to let a facilitator know so that we can follow up afterwards and make sure that you're okay. Each week, a smudge and a prayer that is incorporated into the week's teaching Each week starts with a smudge and a prayer that incorporates the week's teachings to help clients become mindful of what discussion will be had that day. This is open to those who choose to take part. If we are unable to smudge in a venue, then we will just start with a prayer, and then we will smudge after our meeting outside. And when we've done that, the smudge outside afterwards, it's really quite incredible, because it's like the whole discussion that we've just had continues off into our space, and we have a smudge, and the conversation continues. It's almost like we were finding we were getting more out of the people participating when that happened afterwards than we were when we were smudging before. It was just interesting. A facilitator will focus weekly on helping clients meet their individual needs. The program will allow the clients to participate by sharing their lived experiences to support each other in healing, to give them knowledge to apply the teachings in their day-to-day lives, and the decision-making process. So what I noticed when I was developing this, and I mentioned earlier, was that by the time we got to this point, it was like, this doesn't have to be a 12-step addiction program. It's just a healthy way to live. And that as I developed it on this journey, I learned a lot every day, just following the teachings again and getting back to the base, right? Following the program, those that participate will learn skills that will help them grow emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Following the reading, the facilitator will walk the clients through weekly activities and discussion and reflect on the teaching. The intent of the activity was to give the client something to do while we were engaged in conversation that sometimes was pretty deep. And it was noticeable that when somebody was working with their hands and doing a craft or coloring, it was much easier for them to look at what they were doing and have the discussion than it was to sit and look at each other and have a discussion. So the discussion, the craft, the activity just helped that conversation really flow. And then closing the week was a traditional Ojibwe prayer. The traditional Indigenous teachings provided the clients a toolkit to help them in their recovery journey. The teachings that the program focused on are the 7 sacred teachings, which are love, integrity, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, truth. The other teachings we use in the program are forgiveness, the 4 laws of change, perseverance, and spiritual awakening. And the biggest one was community. The 7 sacred teachings are also known as the teachings of the 7 grandfathers. It's a set of teachings on human conduct towards each other, is really what they are. And they're traditional tools and teachings that every community, no matter what kind of community is, uses just to become a community. If you don't have these teachings, as we call them culturally, that way of life is going to be more chaotic than if you live by these teachings. And I just want to share, I heard this from an elder one time, and this is where the following the feather program, the name came from. Because after a lot of thought and a lot of work, it was like, well, what will we call this? What, it needs to have a name. And I remembered hearing an elder say this, and I would like to share it with you. Life's journey is like a quill of a feather. Your life is the path you walk down, is the main vein of the feather. As you go down your path, there are lots of turns and directions you can travel. These directions are the barbs on the feather. The path is long, and you'll have many challenges on your journey, but you will always make it back to the main path. Life gives us the opportunity to change and grow. And once you've reached the end of your journey, or the tip of the feather, we then will be able to guide those after us and teach them the life lessons that we have already learned, and to show them a positive way. So what that said to me was, when you're looking at a feather, all of the barbs are paths and directions you can go, but the privilege that we have in this life is that we can, no matter where we go or where we turn, we can always find that path that is there, the healthy one, the one we should be on before we get lost. You can always go back to that path if that's what you choose. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I believe that this particular block of current sessions wraps up at 3:30, so we do have just a few moments, or a few minutes rather, for questions. But I do really want to thank you for sharing uh, what you've developed out here. I think it's a really amazing program. So thank you for your knowledge. And at this point, just want to invite folks that are in the room, if you have questions for Jackie, we do have a couple of minutes to answer as many as we can. And if we don't have time for all of the questions, we'll figure out a way to get those to Jackie, if that's okay. So if you want to pop questions in the chat, or if you just want to come off of mute. I might, maybe I'll get us started with a question. So Jackie, uh, what was your inspiration for developing this out? Like, how did you, I guess, identify the need? Did you use data? And like, what was your process?
The need I noticed the biggest is in the northern communities, because there's no resources there. So whatever was going to happen there, for the, especially for the members who would go away for treatment and then come back to the community, and that would leave them with no aftercare.
Mhm.
So with no aftercare in recovery, it's my experience and notice that you're more apt to fail, because you're going back to the same, you're in a community of maybe 500 people, and you're walking by your drug dealer's house, every day to get to the store and band office. And there's no place for you to go to take that time up that was used to use before you went away. So it's needed, and it's needed everywhere. I had done some research and was reading and read that the Indigenous population for recovery and just general programming within the prison systems, they don't have half of the programming that's Indigenous or land-based that the rest of the population has. So there is nothing suited for this population of people. There was nothing that was just simply down to earth, a way of living that our people have lived by forever. And it's simple. And it doesn't require a huge amount of money. I think by the time I put this book together and purchased the crafts that I would do, or the activities that we would do, it maybe cost $300. And it's this big, right? I could go in your backpack and you can get on a plane and go to Long Dog Lake Population 15 on a float plane and bring this there with your duffel bag of craft supplies and support the whole community. So the biggest thing is that it was so needed. And when I developed this, Ryan Jakovich and I worked together, and we had started working together in the shelter house here in Thunder Bay, and she was my student there when she was going to college. So to find our life's journey to bring us back together at this point, 20 years later, to be doing and to sit down and develop something like this, we both seen it. We've both seen the need. This can go to any little agency in any corner of Canada and have anyone come off the street and they can share. When the need was really, like we had developed it, and I had a manager for a brief period of time happened to stop in, and she was coming from the Arctic Circle. And she looked at the program and said, this is gold. Do you know how much they could use this where I just come from? Because there's no resources. So it's solid. It has an amazing foundation. It's simple to deliver. Anyone can use it. And of course, you don't need to be Indigenous to follow this. It's a way of life.
And if somebody did want to start the Following the Feather Addiction Support Program in their community, how would they go about doing that?
You can just reach out to Norwest, and they'll put you through to me, and we can figure out how we're going to do that. But it's just so simple, and it's easy. It's easy for people to participate, and it's easy to facilitate. It's been sitting on my desk, and I am in the new year going to run this program here for our round program for their clients who come here on a weekly or monthly basis to be able to come in, and we will make a lunch for them because they're, again, the vulnerable population, and they're just trying to stay sober. So I'm going to run it right here. People advocating for change through empowerment, PACE, have asked if I would come in and teach someone how to facilitate it there. And then, once you have that binder, it's there and it's all there. Every question you need to ask, every way there is to engage. You don't even need to have a background in addictions to run this program.
That's great. It sounds like you've done a lot of the legwork to reduce any barriers to implementing this in other communities uh, that are low resourced. Like it's a very spreadable program. I think that's really amazing.
And those are the places where it's most needed.
Hmm. Well, I do see that we're at time, and Jackie, I want to thank you again, and please join me in thanking Jackie for sharing her knowledge and her presentation this afternoon. Again, I apologize for the start, but really appreciate that you were able to join us, and do encourage you to complete the evaluation that is on the session page. And I believe that we are moving to the main plenary room of the event will be platform for the day two closing remarks. And I see lots of thank yous coming in the chat. Thank you for that. And I wish you all a great rest of your day. Thank you very
For
much.
having me, Ashley. It's been very nice to meet you.
It's been a pleasure, Jackie. It's been our honor. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. All
Thank you,
right.
Jackie. That was great.
All
Good
right.
afternoon, everybody.
Take good care.